Good morning, world!
Welcome to the first episode of the Career Cafe, brought to you by Taylion High Desert Academy.
My name is Edward.
And I'm Raymond.
And we are excited to be able to bring you this brand new podcast. We are looking at a variety of professions with each episode, interviewing professionals to find out more about their passion. If you would like to be considered to be interviewed at Career Cafe, let us know in the comments.
Our guest today is a professional artist and photographer working in the industry for the past 6 years. She has created artwork, all sorts of mediums and shots, countless events and sessions. We would like to welcome
Miss Rebecca Rubio. Okay, welcome, Miss Rubio. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
So, how did you get into art and photography?
I've always had kind of a passion for art and photography. Those are some of the skills that I had when I was younger, but it wasn't until I worked for Sears Portrait Studios a couple years back that I actually started getting into photography full time. And at that time, once I kind of made my own photography business, I also started selling artwork as well.
Oh,
okay,
that's interesting.
Nice.
Well, another question I have for you today is, what inspires you when you're creating art?
I listen to a lot of music. I find that music is very inspiring for me, as well as different things that happen in my life or things that are going on around me. So a lot of times when I'm working on a piece of artwork, I'm drawing inspiration from events or from music or from maybe an inspiring quote, such as this one right here, which is actually my favorite quote, which is "keep moving forward."
Okay. And back to how you get your information, your inspiration, what motivates you to keep doing it?
I find that it's something that really speaks to me and I enjoy it a lot. It's kind of a stress reliever for me, as well as something I really enjoy doing. And when I'm able to share that with other people, I get a lot of self-satisfaction out of that, so I really enjoy it.
Well, bringing it to people, it could be kind of tough. So I would like to know, how do you deal with difficult clients?
In photography, a lot of times people come in, they might not know necessarily what they're looking for. That's in photography and also in art. A lot of times people will come in and they'll say, well, this is kind of an idea of what I want, but they don't have a very definite picture. So a lot of times it may be going back to the drawing board a lot and seeing, is this what they want and what can I tweak for them? I haven't had anyone who's been super difficult as a client. Most of them are pretty open to artistic interpretation, both in photography and in artwork. So it just kind of depends on the person.
Okay. And as for a job, would you say it's a stable job, or do you have other jobs as well?
I would definitely say it's a stable job. It is not my full-time job, as my full-time job is actually here with you guys at Taylion Academy as your school counselor. But I do also bring my art and photography into Taylion as a school counselor as well. But I think definitely if you were to put 100% into it, it could be a very stable job.
All right. So bringing you to that job, what is the hardest part of being a photographer?
I think the hardest part about being a photographer is really when you're a freelance photographer, you make your own schedule. So if you're going to make your own schedule, you have to set your hours and you have to make sure you stick with those hours, because otherwise you're not going to have a successful business. If you're just saying, yeah, I'm a photographer, but then you're like, well, I can't do that shoot, I can't do that shoot because I'm busy, I want to do this instead, then you're losing out on clients, and then in turn you're losing out on your money. So you have to make sure you stick with your schedule. So for example, I have my schedule here at Taylion, but I also have my schedule outside of work that I have scheduled in for, this is when I do my photography, this is when I do my art side of the business.
Okay. And would you say you have faced any problems as an artist or a photographer?
I would say sometimes probably the hardest part with photography is when I go out and do shoots in areas I'm not familiar with. The lighting could be really bad, the lighting could be really poor, the ground could be mushy, so some of the shots I want to make I might not necessarily be able to do because I don't want to get on the ground and get in the mud and make the shot. So it really just depends on the situation. I think with art's a lot more fun because even if you make mistakes, you just work it into the painting. or the piece of art you're working with. So it's a little bit different.
All right, now I would like to take it to your equipment. What type of camera do you use?
I actually have 2 cameras. I stick with Nikon, so Nikon is the brand that I use, but I have 2 cameras. One is a D7200 and the other one is a D750.
Okay, and with equipment, again, would you say you use multiple lenses or just one?
I do go through multiple lenses. It depends on the shoot. When I'm doing portrait shoots, I normally use a smaller lens. When I'm doing long shoots, for example, at a wedding, I don't necessarily want to be right in front of the stage taking pictures and blocking everyone's view. So I might use a longer lens that I can stand in the back of the ceremony and I can take pictures from.
All right, now I'm going to take it to your art equipment. What tools do you use to create art?
I use all different types of tools. It really depends on what I'm making. I make a lot of different types of art. So I go through things like paint, such as these paints right here. I might use acrylics. I might use watercolors. I also use, I use a lot of wood and canvas. So for example, like this right here, this is a wood piece, but that's a canvas piece over there. This has actually hot glue gun in it. So I use
really
hot glue gun to make the back of the Spider-Man. This is actually like a watered down spray paint over here. This is regular acrylics, but the middle part is Sharpie paint, so that's a little bit different. Also, I made these mugs for you guys for your guys' thing, and this is ceramic paint pens, and then you bake them and you make them like that.
Cool.
And this is chalkboard paint, which I also made for you guys. And then this is embroidery string and nails. So it just depends on what I'm making. I use a lot of different things. These are definitely my favorite paints right here, but it just depends on what I'm doing and what I'm making.
As for clients, do clients give all the details for a photo shoot or do you come up with it?
A lot of times they have an idea of what they want, like the theme. For example, they might say, I want to do maternity photos, or I want to do engagement photos, or I want to do family photos. But that's usually where it stops. They don't really have an idea of what they want. They might have a location, and then a lot of times when I know what the location is going to be, I'll research the location if I haven't been there before, and then I will see what, I will ask how many people are going to be in the frame, because if there's a lot more people, you're a little bit more limited to large group shots versus you might do a lot of breakdowns versus a lot together. So it just kind of depends on who's asking for the photos, but I mean it just really depends on the client.
Well, now to you, what is your style and preferences on photos?
I like warm toned photos. I don't like to do the cool colors. I like to bring out people's happiness and their joy. So I think that the warm tones oftentimes bring that out a little bit more than the cold photos. Cool colors would be more of like a bluish green tint versus a like warmer like orangey red tint type of thing.
Okay. And with photos, and when you take them, do you edit your own photos, and what would you use to edit them?
Yes, I do edit my own photos. I use Lightroom mostly. Sometimes I use Photoshop. Normally I try to stay away from Photoshop because I don't believe in taking away from people's photos. I like them to be as real as possible, but if you have like a giant pimple, I will definitely get rid of that for you.
All right, well, I wanted to ask you this question. So is it just you, or do you have a team?
Normally it's just me, but I do have a second photographer for when I shoot weddings. If they ask for 2 photographers, I do offer a partnership with another photographer, but that's normally the only case I work with someone else.
Okay, interesting. And did you have a role model, or who was your role model?
I would say I've had quite a few different role models. I find it very inspiring when I work with other people who stick with their goals, and like I said, that's my favorite quote, just keep moving forward. And I think when someone models that, it's very inspiring, and I don't know if I could pick one person off the top of my head, because I've met a lot of different inspiring people, but definitely just that idea of keep moving forward.
All right, so I would like to know, what was the hardest piece of artwork to make?
The hardest piece, I do murals. So murals I think are the hardest when they involve lettering, because I hand letter everything. I don't use stencils. I take pride in the fact that I usually hand letter what I'm working on. And I did this one mural that was probably the size of this whole wall right here. And it was words from top to bottom to about here. And then there was like a a border, but I had to do the whole thing with letters, and that took a long time, and it was pretty challenging because when you have lettering, you have to make sure it's straight. So I had to go first, and I had to pencil where I was going to put the letters, and I had to go, always step off the ladder, make sure it's still straight, and then I had to go back there with a Sharpie so you could actually see it. And if I made a mistake, then I had to go back and paint the wall with, the regular
It's very
paint.
tedious.
Yes, it was a very tedious, but it came out awesome. So I
And
was happy.
as that was like the hardest part you did, what's the hardest photo shoot?
I actually have a picture of the hardest photo that I've ever taken. I was at this wedding, and I wanted to have this picture where they had fishing rods, and they had the rings tied to the fishing rod. But it was so windy that day that every time I went to take the picture, it would
Ring just goes
yeah,
in
it
the
would
shot.
yeah, it would be like whee.
sucks.
So this was a really hard photo to get, but I got it, so I was pretty proud of that one.
Nice, cool.
Thank you.
All right, so bringing it to our last question. What advice would you give for someone that wants to be an artist or a photographer?
Don't give up on it. I think that it's really important that many people are going to tell you that's not a career, and that's not going to be something you can make a lot of money off of, or you're going to make a living off of. But you can. And I think if you believe in yourself, and I think if you believe in what you do, you will be successful in it.
Well, thank you for your time
Of course, it was
Thank
great
you
meeting
for
you guys again. Thank you for having me. I will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Again, thank you guys for coming and watching the first episode of Taylion High Desert Academy's Career Cafe.
Oh, and don't forget to use our hashtag #FindMyCareer if you're interested in getting interviewed.
And also don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Taylion Academy.